we don't sing some of those 10 chorus hymns, which is probably a good thing. All right, we're getting to the end of Matthew, and I kind of skipped over stuff, went to the last dialogue, so we'll finish up the last dialogue, and then we'll start the passion narrative, resurrection narrative. But, as always, we got words of the day. I just threw in a couple for fun, and a couple because they're really good to know. But this one, Presbytereon, presbyteron, which presbyter comes from this word. It means elder, basically. I thought that was pretty cute. We'll see it when we get to the thing. But presbyter, and it's not used in a positive terms, except in Timothy in the New Testament, but that's all right. Presbyteron, elder. This one is interesting. This is the Z sound. This is in English. Which is a Z sound? You think? Xylophone. Ah, gotcha. In English, X and Z have a similar sound, Z sound, and so this could be spelled either Z or X in English. X, U, E. Let's say, let's use U. L-O-N. Xulon. Xulon means a stick of wood. So translated club. You can guess where we're going with passion narrative, right? Club. This one's even better. We've had it before. I don't think it has word of the day. M-A-C-H-A-I-R-O-N. Machiron. Machiron. Not Macarena. Machiron is basically a knife. It's translated a sword, usually in the King James. But it's kind of more than a knife and less than a sword. Because remember, swords are illegal, right? The first thing you want to do when you subjugate people is you take away their weapons. And so there are no swords except by the Romans were illegally held by the Essenes or the Zealots.
So is it a dagger?
It's more like a dagger or a dirk. Yeah. And by the way, you know where we're going, right? Because they brought sticks, clubs, and translated swords, but it's really daggers. And then the knife that was used to chop off the ear of the servant of the high priest was with a machiron. But this word in Greek is one of the few words that has a euphemistic meaning. It means judicial punishment. So it's very interesting that the author, Matthew, chose this word to be used. Remember when it says, I come not to bring peace, but a sword? That's in the Sermon on the High Place, right after the Sermon on the High Place. This is what is used, not sword, but machiron, which means judicial punishment. And so this word means judicial punishment. I'm not sure why this means judicial punishment, because it's not long enough, this kind of sword isn't long enough to cut off your head. I guess it's long enough to cut off your ears or your hand or whatever, but
it's long enough to stab you in the heart.
I guess it's long enough to stab you in the heart. Almost. You'll probably die in pain. Now this is one of the best words, because I don't think I've ever really given it to you. Why is there an S in there? I don't think that's a form of this. Because I pulled it right out of my... I'm not going to look it up. Anyway, it's not finesso. Well, I guess it's close. But let's do it in its normal form. Phileo. Phileo. You know what phileo is, right? Remember the loves? There's like 10, 12 different types of love and like in Greek. This is one of them. This is the only type of love and like that really is of equal basis. That is, two equals. So, and really women weren't included. Women, I guess, could have, well, in the Greek mindset, women were not like humans, so they weren't like equivalent. And look, I'm just telling you what the Greeks thought, okay? Hebrews weren't much better, but women had more rights under Hebraic thought than Greek thought. In Roman thought, women had lots of rights. Women had more rights under Romans. They had the most rights in the ancient world were under the ancient Egyptians until the Romans, and then women had more rights. But in general, phileo is a love reserved for peers or equals that are humans. Because remember, agape can only be used of the gods. Love of the gods, really not even to the gods, but of the gods. So the gods can agape and each other and agape people, but humans can't agape anything. But they can phileo, because phileo is a peered thing. All the other loves and likes are not peered kind of things. This word is also the word for kiss. So when it says that Judas would betray him with a phileo, which indicated, and by the way, it says kataphleo. Anybody remember what kata is for a suffix? Kataphleo? Kata means a lot. Kata. So an affectionate kiss. Give him a big sloppy one, I guess. I don't know. But that's what it says in the New Testament, in Matthew. L-E-S-T-A-I. Lestai. The reason I give you this word is because this is a word that is translated usually thief or robbers. So the guys that are on the crosses on either side of Christ. But it is neither. It is brigands. What's a brigand?
A lawbreaker.
More than that. Most technically, a brigand is somebody who is in political revolt, or either for political reasons or just for lawless reasons. So a brigand is a little bit more than, well, let's put it this way. We know they didn't kill thieves, right? What did they do with thieves in the ancient world? They chopped up their hands, they might have just killed them outright. You didn't waste time crucifying thieves. The people you crucified were who? Political prisoners, rebels, that kind of thing. So if you read my book Centurion, you remember that what I say is that they were actually associates with Barabbas, and they were probably one of the prayer leaders. So the New Testament mistranslation of this word is usually as thieves or robbers, but it's not. They're political leaders or extremists, probably of the Zealots, most likely. They probably raised a hand against Roman legionnaires or against some facet of the political bodies.
Lionel, stop just a second.
Yeah.
Then the conversation between the two brigands or whatever you said they should be called.
Yeah.
Why was it they said they did something wrong? Well, if they truly believed in their cause, they weren't doing something wrong. So how does that rationalize? When it's translated as thieves or robbers, then it kind of makes sense. But
because they,
or is that conversation mistranslated?
Generally, if you were going to be crucified for political reasons, there are lots of political reasons, but most likely if you were a zealot, you were being crucified because you had murdered. And the zealots were not unhappy with murdering. This is the problem with the zealots, is they murdered, they're like the current Islamic, terrorists, jihadists. I mean, they murder women and children and other Muslims.
But why the conversation that the one says to the other, we did do wrong. He was blameless.
Well, we have to look at that, and it's not in Matthew, so I didn't go look at the exact language. But,
okay.
But I suspect that, remember, in Matthew, they don't come goodness. And in which one? I think it's Luke. Where is it, in Luke that they have the conversation?
I'm looking at it. I'm trying to find it.
Is it Luke? Anyway, wherever they have the conversation, we have to parse and look at exactly what the Greek says. But even so, one of them didn't and the other guy did. So, I mean, when you're on the, I love this. When you're on the cross being crucified, you have a come to Jesus meeting with Jesus himself, right? So, remember, everybody's looking for a Messiah, and that the Hebrews had a Messiah in every generation from 171 or 2, whenever the temple was retaken by the Hasmoneans, by the Maccabees, every BC. There was a Messiah in every generation. And the Zealots were looking for a Messiah too. Matter of fact, Barabbas means what? Son of the Father. Barabbas means son of the Father in Hebrew, in Aramaic. So guess what he's claiming to be? The Messiah. But Barabbas went where? If these guys are associates of Barabbas, as I say in Centurion and is implied, pretty much implied in the gospel, otherwise why would they kill? Okay. You can figure this out, right? I'm going to crucify someone today because that's what we do. We're Romans. We're going to crucify somebody today who's opposed our empire. So who am I going to crucify? Well, I'm going to crucify Barabbas and his two followers, or his two leaders. Because you didn't usually crucify followers, you crucified leaders, because why waste your time, right? With the rabbi. You just kill him. So I'm going to crucify Barabbas and two of his leaders. So Barabbas gets sent to where? The people, and who gets left? So who gets crucified in Barabbas' place? Jesus. To me, this is obvious. You know, the writer doesn't tell us this, but it's pretty obvious.
Mark and Luke don't record a conversation between the robber, but Mark calls them robbers, Luke calls them criminals, and I'm trying to find it in John.
Don't worry. This word is used.
Must be in John.
Lestei is used, and it probably is John where they have the conversation. But one of them came to. One of them was there, and the other one was in another place. Let's see. Egerthe. Is that right?
Geiro.
Oh, well, that's close enough. No, that's TH. Did I get another wrong?
Yeah, the letters.
I pulled this Agerio. Oh, okay. All right. I'm not teaching declensions in Greek. All right. I'm not going to teach you how to parse verbs or nouns. But yeah, Agerio. All right. You see the problem with vowels in Greek? You always have problems with vowels in Greek. Okay. Agerio. Agerio is the word to waken.
That's not how you spell it, that's okay.
Okay, close.
E-I-R-O.
E-I-R-O.
No, well,
Why is there a TH there?
it's
I pulled it right out.
E.
Oh,
Oh,
I
it's
must,
understanding.
no, R TH. There. Egerthea. Well, okay. This is a Greek verb form, egerthea, and this is it. Egerio is the primary. Just like in English we say to do this, you know, to go, right? That's the form of the verb form. And go, went, gone, right? You know what I'm talking about. Any case, Egerio. Egerio is the word that's translated to rise from the dead. But you notice we never, okay. In a modern translation, you might find the word resurrection. The problem with the word resurrection is this. There is no word in Greek that means to resurrect from the dead. Matter of fact, I will put it to you very bluntly. There is no ancient language that has a word for resurrection. Resurrection is a modern word.
And when you say resurrection, do you mean that you're raising yourself from the dead and not raising someone else from the dead? Is that the differentiation in resurrection?
There is no word in the ancient world that means someone resurrected you or you were resurrected from the dead. The closest Greek is to egerio, to stand up in the marketplace, literally, stand up in the marketplace from the necros, from necros. And this is, where's necros?
You needed more copies.
I didn't put necros up there.
No, you've got it in the definition.
Oh man, because I didn't put the things. Necros. Necros is dead. Necros is a corpse. Death. So whenever you see the Greek, what you see is egerio from necros. To awaken from the dead. To literally rise up in the marketplace from the dead. Because they didn't have any word that was close. There is another word that's used in Greek, but it's a very similar meaning. So there is no word in Greek for to resurrect. So, you know, people say all the time that before Christ, you've heard this before, I'm sure, that, for example, in Mysterions, I'm going to keep talking about Mysterions, in Mysterions and other stuff, and other ancient religions, there were other accounts of saviors who rose from the dead or gods that rose from the dead. Well, how could that be? The Greeks that had sacred words for everything had no word for raised from the dead.
So nobody could.
Well, no one did until after Christ. That's what's really funny. All of a sudden, after the resurrection of Christ, you start seeing in the Syrian Mysterions, in the Mysterions of Mithras, the Mithrin, I'm not going to talk, if you want to talk Mithrin, that gets kind of weird. But anyway, none of these guys resurrected from the dead. Until mystically after Christ, and then all of a sudden you see a lot of the Mysterions taking on the aspects of Christianity. Their gods suddenly came back from death. And you remember the Osirian mystery, Osiris? Osiris and Mithras are really connected because both of them lost key male body parts in their myth cycle. But Osiris was he wasn't really resurrected. He's the guy who's always portrayed as a mummy because he's dead. And he never came totally back alive because he was always missing one body part. Okay? And so the Osirian Mysterion, Osiris is dead. He's still dead. He's going to stay dead forever until he finds his body part, which, by the way, was hidden by the other gods, so he couldn't come back from the dead. Mithras has a similar problem, very similar type god. But the only god in history where, by the way, we've invented words in modern languages to describe resurrection from the dead because no one ever thought of it before Christ.
Who first used the word resurrection? In what language was it first used?
Well, resurrection is an English word, and I think the Latin, but I'd have to go back because we don't see it in history. You know, I key on ancient Greek, and I'm just, we have no ancient Greek forms, and there are no ancient Hebrew words for resurrect from the dead. There are no ancient Egyptian forms for it. We only see these words for resurrection in the modern era. And unfortunately, usually I do know all the, I either do it or found it out. I need to look that up, where the resurrection, the actual word come from. But you can tell it's a long word. So what does that mean usually in English?
Some words put together.
Yeah, and you don't find it in Anglo-Saxon, right? I mean, that's not an Anglo-Saxon word. All the shun words are not Anglo-Saxon. Shun words come from, election, resurrection. All those come out of Latin. They're Romantic language forms, okay? Not out of Anglo-Saxon forms. You don't have those forms in German or Anglo-Saxon. So, it's not an Anglo-Saxon form of the language. In any case, that's the reason the word I gave you that word. And necros, and then mysterion, if you can't notice, is the last one. I don't have time. I want to talk about common features of mysterion. But I don't have time to do that. So let's go to, because, we can't ever forget the mysterion is part of the thing that's leading to a lot of this. Leading in a lot of this, what's happening. So, in chapter 24, I want to finish the fifth discourse, and I really want to quickly get into the other points. So, I need to make this point again. In 3:24, Jesus was sitting in the Mount of Olives, and his disciples came to him privately and said, "Tell us," they said, "when will this happen, and what will be the sign of your parousia and the end, the sonatelia, the entire consummation of the age?" And I told you that was a gross mistranslation. It literally says, "When will this happen, and what is the sign of your near being, and the entire completion of this aeon, this period of time?" In other words, very simply, when is the beginning of the Messianic era? And if you remember, then there comes this whole chapter. Actually, there's 2 chapters of irony. 2 chapters of astounding Greek irony, in which Jesus basically makes, what to us, I'm not going to say uninformed. And if we look at this incorrectly, we'll see this as prophecy, but it's not prophecy at all. It's simply irony. Because who is sitting before them right now, at this moment? The Son of Man. He called himself already the Son of Man over and over again, right? He told them he was the Son of Man. He's sitting before them. So how can the Son of Man come? How can he come again? He hasn't gone. Do you see this? We're going to see this irony played out in the Passion narrative. Because, as I told you, we tend to look at the Gospels very incorrectly. We look at the Gospels like this. Saying, they're little story, little story, little story, little story. When in actuality, they're like this, in terms of the logos to tell us. They're cohesive logos to tell us. And what you do see is you'll see this. You'll see overlapping logos to tell us arguments, in the piece of different constructions. But overall, every single one of these logos to tell us arguments fits together into a cohesive whole. And so when you see the irony, the powerful irony of 24-25 going into 26, what should you imagine you're going to see in the next section? The fulfillment of that irony, the completion of that irony. And so the great irony is, and let me see, the great irony, in 36, let's see, 35, let's look at 35.
Are you chapter 24?
24:35, yep, 24:35. Heaven, Uranus and Ge will pass away. Actually, it doesn't say that. It says they will parakonai, they will become one. So close together you can't tell the difference. But my logos will never pass away. My parakomai, come so close together that my words are not misunderstandable. As a matter of fact, what is the message? What is the thesis of all of Matthew?
Kingdom of heaven.
Kingdom of heaven is near, repent.
Repent, for the kingdom of heaven is near. Is aegeus. Is parakomai. Is coming so close together that you can't tell the difference between them. And so he tells you, okay, if this is a whole thesis statement, then in 35 he gives you a declaration. That heaven and earth will pass away, that they will come so close together that you won't be able to tell the difference. Has that happened yet? That hasn't happened yet. So the whole thesis of Matthew has not happened yet. They'll come so close together you can't tell the difference. But my words will never fade so close together that you will not be able to understand. By the way, it's not just words, it's logos, my argument. So he goes on, he talks about, no one knows the day or the hour, neither the angels in heaven, nor the Son, only the Father, as it was in the days of Noah. So it will be at the coming of the Son of Man. Who are they talking to?
Son of Man.
This is irony. He's already there. He's telling them that what is this like right now in their time? Like the days of Noah. In other words, the flood is going to come. Noah was told about the flood how many years before? Who knows? Hundreds of years before, so he could build the ark, right? So guess what? It is like the days of Noah, because they're sitting with the Son of Man, who's been with them for how many years, right? Well, however long he's been there, it's like the days of Noah. You see, we want to take this to mean the days of Noah is just the days of Noah. But remember, whenever you see a reference in the rabbinic thought, whenever you see a reference to one scripture, what do you go back and look at?
The whole thing.
The whole thing. And so the whole thing in the account of Noah is how Noah saved the earth through God's intervention because God told him. So guess what Jesus is telling them? I've been here. You know the flood is coming. Right? Anyway. For in the days before the flood, people were eating and drinking, marrying, giving in marriage to the day that Noah entered the ark. So Noah is about to enter the ark. They knew nothing about what would happen until the flood came and took them all away. This is how it will be at the coming of the Son of Man. The Son of Man sitting right before them. He's telling them that the ark is getting ready to pull away. It's irony. And then he goes on about 2 men in the field, 2 women grinding the handmill. He'd already addressed this in the Sermon on the High Place. Remember the family's broken apart? He's telling you the Son of Man, what's going to happen? Breaking apart of families, breaking apart of friendship, because he's already talked about this. It's already been talked about. The difference between phileo and agape. These are kind of reviews because we had this last time. But anyway, therefore keep watch, because you do not know on what day the Lord will come. Do you see what irony this is? Okay, if I'm the Lord and I'm sitting before you and I say to you, therefore keep watch, because you don't know on which day the Lord will come.
But Lionel,
Yeah.
maybe I'm the only one in this room, but
All right.
I was always brought up to believe that this is the prophecy of the second coming. And you're saying that it's irony.
How can there be a second coming when he hasn't gone? You can't.
The prophecy that he's
Yeah.
going to come again after his crucifixion.
I know people think that, but
I'm just-
but I'm just telling you that how can that be when he hasn't gone? I mean, unless you want to, imagine something that is not, Greek. If it said someplace This is the prophecy. It doesn't say that. There's no place in this where Jesus says this is a prophecy of my second coming. It doesn't say that at all. That's when I got into the Greek. You know, and you know, theologically, you can make up stuff all you want, and that's cool. And I'm not going to dissuade anyone from having a viewpoint of that this is perhaps a thing of the second coming. I'm just telling you what the Greek says. The Greek does not say this at all, and the Greek does not even imply it. The Greek shows you this is pure irony. Yeah.
Well, to support your irony comment, it seems to me that his audience, their reference frame, couldn't comprehend a second coming because I haven't seen him gone the first time.
Bingo. Bingo. Exactly. You know,
This isn't to say that you don't believe that Christ is going to come a second time. This is just not the scripture.
it's not a question of belief. We know that from other sources in the New Testament. But even those are sometimes interesting because, you know, we talk about Thessalonians. Thessalonians is not about the second coming of Christ. Paul's message in Thessalonians is don't worry about the second coming of Christ. As right, we believe that Christ is where? Right now. What do we believe? He's in our midst at the right hand of God the Father, which is what he said would happen. And by the way, Matthew's viewpoint, if anyone has read ahead, what is Matthew's viewpoint? Jesus never left. He's still hanging. You know, we get in Acts, the beginning of Luke, where we see he goes away. But in Matthew's, end of Matthew's gospel, he's still here. He hasn't gone. And the implication is what? He's going to be here. Because the whole point in Matthew is what? Repent, for the kingdom of heaven is approaching. And the Son of Man represents that. So I'm not saying that don't take, you know, whatever else you've learned, and that's cool. I'm just telling you what it says from a pure Greek standpoint. Historically, this is what the Greek says. And if you want to read into it a 2020 hindsight post-apocalyptic view, that's okay. Because I think when you see the passion narrative laid out appropriately, you're going to see why Jesus said what he said. Yeah.
When I was in college, I took a class on the teachings of the Roman Catholic Church, and this is in agreement, what you're saying from the Greek is in agreement with their teaching. Is somebody asked a question about this reference in particular, and they said, those things aren't coming, that's already happened. And that was kind of astounding to me at that time, because that was the first time I'd ever heard of the whole concept that this isn't prophecy, those things had already occurred at that time. So.
Jesus will definitely come again. That's a message. But, you know, that the message of the Mysterion, the Mysterion of Christianity that became the Greek that Christianity infiltrated was Christ has died, Christ is risen, Christ will come again. And this is neat stuff, you know, and there is a lot of evidence for that, but not in Matthew. Not in Matthew. This is not what Matthew talks about. Now, what we want to do is we want to take all the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and try to do what with them?
Make them the same.
Make them the same. Resolve them as if they were like this. As if they were like this. Sayings and stories. They're not sayings and stories. They are cohesive logos to tell us arguments for a specific thing. In the case of Matthew, it is the thesis, you know, is a thesis statement. That the proof text, and by the way, I've already told you the proof text way back, if you remember in the first semester, we talked about what is the logos to tell us of Matthew, and that is that the logos to tell us of Matthew is the argument that the kingdom of heaven is approaching through the Son of Man, and the proof text is the Son of Man resurrected, that Christ resurrected. What we've been looking at now is what does the Greek actually